Hey everyone, welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive Show with me, Reed Daly. It is episode number 16 of the show. Today is August 24th, and if you are in Chicago with me, it's been a very, very hot day. In fact, it's been a very hot week. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We're talking about news in tech and what matters in all things tech and business. We've got global tech news on this week's episode. We're going to jump from there into a podcast spotlight, doing a deep dive of some new technology that I'm really fired up about, and then round out the show talking about where you can connect with me in real life or digitally. Before we jump into the show, I want to remind you all ideas, thoughts are my own and not shared by any organization. And more importantly, I want you to hit that subscribe button. That's right. You can do it on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, however you want to call it, over on Twitter or LinkedIn on the newsletter. But just hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. All right. With that said, let's jump in. So in global tech news, the Wall Street Journal published an article about the rising demands for enterprise AI tools, which everyone knows. AI is prolific in terms of the tech news as well as just general conversation. Heck, even I've got my mom building out her garden party events through AI tools. But CoreWeave secured a $2.3 billion debt facility to build data centers that can handle more intensive computer applications. I don't think that this is a single instance where capital is going to be deployed into data centers, but really the beginning of an onslaught of more conversations around new data centers, new facilities, and more, compute power. Now, spending in the global AI infrastructure market includes data centers as well as networks and other hardware to support AI. And this industry, they are estimating, is going to hit $420 billion by 2029, growing at a compounded annual rate of 44%. So it is going to skyrocket here over the next few years. And the Data Bridge Market Research, who did the study, said the net is good in the data center business and even better for the chip business. So if you're NVIDIA, stock was great. It's going to keep on going up. Can't wait to see who else gets into the chip business as we start to move more and more chip manufacturing, hopefully onshore. We're going to see some new emerging companies, brands, technology launch. And I'm really, as much as I'm excited about AI and the infrastructure and the chips, it will be really interesting to see how their applications continue to evolve. As you know, the chips from NVIDIA were more designed for video games, and they found a home or an application in AI. So it'll be interesting to see how these chips, the use cases evolve, and how the use of these data centers and this compute power continues to evolve over the coming years. All right, moving from chips and data centers, let's talk about BYOM. I didn't say BYOB, I said BYOM with Salesforce. And a couple weeks back, Salesforce announced that they are launching Bring Your Own Model, which allows customers to bring their proprietary data into Data Cloud to build and train their models. This is coming from Rahul Arakaba, the EVP and GM of the United Data Services and Einstein, who told TechCrunch this. So grabbing the story for TechCrunch, thanks for covering this. When you bring your external model and mix it with Salesforce data and Data Cloud, it's a very powerful combination. So Einstein is the AI engine or branded term from Salesforce that launched a couple years back. And while I'm not I would say I don't live and breathe all things Salesforce. I definitely have exposure to all of their different clouds and Einstein. And I think you're still seeing the use cases unfold. And I have to imagine that these enterprise businesses that have sort of AI engines historically have been much more of basic if then logic. And with these LLMs, I think you're going to see more prolific insights coming from the data. So it'll be very curious how Salesforce continues to evolve Einstein and helps, with not only ensuring that users are excited with spending more money on these features with their different clouds, but how the businesses could use it themselves to help prevent things like customer churn or customer sat or whatever the use case might be. So as someone who definitely is concerned with the use of LLMs and data being put into them, is excited to see more and more businesses sort of flying the flag that it's bring your own data, and there's ways, hopefully or presumably, that it can be done in a secure manner that sort of puts guardrails on your data. So looking forward to see what comes out from Salesforce more on this topic. All right, so we can't go from talking about AI infrastructure to AI software to not talking about more AI software. And so we're going from Salesforce to ServiceNow with their AI capabilities. And ServiceNow expands generative AI capabilities with case summarization and text to code to drive speed, productivity, and value. And the report that was part of this press release is that if used properly, these AI tools can reduce the amount of time it takes an employee to do their work up to 40%. Case summarization and text to code can help organizations realize near immediate productivity gains, simplifying processes and allowing employees to focus on solving problems quickly. So obviously from a ServiceNow perspective, this is helping their case summarization automatically distill crucial information from IT and HR and customer service, streamlining resolutions. And then from a text to code converts natural language text prompts into executable code for the ServiceNow platform, providing developers with an optimized and efficient way to create code. So on one side, it's helping the ServiceNow sort of platforms or service platforms help execute those tasks more efficiently or automatically, if you will. And the other side is helping individuals kind of code and develop on the ServiceNow platform. Now, my question is, with all these AI tools, are companies going to reduce headcount, or are they just going to say, we're going to use our existing headcount, train them up on how to best be a querier or use AI, and then let's go tackle more and grow our top line? Only time will tell. Continuing down the trend on AI, let's jump into Box. No one puts baby in the box was what I thought about calling this story. I didn't. I just said Box goes AI. But Box, your favorite enterprise cloud storage, extends AI efforts with Microsoft 365 Copilot, which basically means Box is partnering with ChatGPT or OpenAI to enable users to leverage Microsoft 365 Copilot in Box's content. So you can use it not only for the Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but one would imagine that down the road you'll be able to use it on unstructured data in a very meaningful fashion. That's just, where I think it will likely go with Box, and not a big surprise on this one given Box's relationship with Microsoft. Okay, so closing out, I didn't want to actually talk about AI the whole way through. Apple Podcast, which this show is on, has given new creator tools which allow you to see subscription analytics within the Apple Podcast Connect creators platform. Ironically, I don't have the details on Spotify, but Spotify came out with their flavor of it this week as well. But for those who don't know, historically, podcasts have just been RSM feeds, and you kind of just put them out into the ether. And over time, as these shows and this platform or format has gotten more and more popular, creators and the marketing organizations that sponsor them want to know, how well are you doing? Who are you listening to? Or how many downloads you have? Or how many listeners you have? Et cetera, et cetera. So if you do podcasting and you are on the Apple Podcast platform or network, however you want to call it, make sure you go take a look at it. It is very helpful. I was amazed at just how easy it was. And kudos to Apple for making it simple. It's what Apple does. All right, so that kind of wraps it up for the headlines. And normally, or in the last few shows, I've been very much spotlighting a lot of the work and businesses evolving in Chicago. But as you guys know, listening to this show, I also spend quite a bit of time in Boston. And one of the companies that really caught my eye in Boston that I want to spotlight was Portrait Analytics. And they are sort of creating more aha moments for analysts. So Portrait Analytics raised $7 million, led by Unusual Ventures, which is like one of my favorite venture names, and .406 Ventures, which I never really looked up why it was called that, but either way. So what it does is, or what problem they're trying to solve is nearly the fact that when we're dealing with all this raw intelligence from all of these opportunities, there's no way to sort of match them or pattern match them in a meaningful way. So through this stack, they'll be able to take sort of some of the financial analysis for some deals and help pair them with the right investment vehicle or individual. And so it will be pretty fantastic to see that come to light. And so the analysts win because it just helps speed up their analysis, and it's almost like you're able to jam on ideas with an LLM and sort of ask questions and sort of form hypotheses how I envision this tool working. But this is just one of many tools that are going to be powered by an LLM and helping take in semi-structured or unstructured data and make meatloaf out of the meat, if you will. I need a better analogy. Someone help me there. So on LinkedIn, if you go to our newsletter, that's the Digital Deep Dive Show, you can actually find the link to the company's website and the Built in Boston article on this company, as well as links to all the other articles I mentioned above. Kudos to the team from Portrait Analytics on their raise. And keep it moving. All right, so we're going to jump into a podcast spotlight. It's been a couple episodes, I think, since I've done one of these, and I was really fired up about, lists or finding this podcast. So I've listened to Jason Calacanis' podcast, This Week in Startups, a few times. Jason's part of the Four Horsemen on the All In podcast that I listen to pretty religiously on the weekends, and he had an episode with the Qualtrics co-founder Ryan Smith, who also now owns the Utah Jazz, as well as part owner or maybe full owner, or no, I think it's part owner of Salt Lake FC, the MLS team. And of course, the podcast talks about owning, the Utah Jazz and the road to that, and then some of the experiences he had leading up to that through being a Qualtrics owner. But what I really found really interesting, as you can tell, this is one of the younger owners, tech-focused, feels like a younger sort of, I don't want to say Mark Cuban, because he's not as brash, but it was really talking about how he took his learnings from running and founding Qualtrics with all the data and insights and applied that sort of thinking and insight framework into owning a basketball team. And so one of the biggest things they were talking about in the podcast is how, you get certain blackout dates on games for local fans if not enough people come to the stadium. There's also issues with the quality of the programming and how you get it and which channels or formats can you get it. And he was talking about how they kind of took back the rights and they're producing their own show to control, I don't want to call it the narrative, but control the product. Then he also jumped into the Qualtrics product evolution and how the use of data to drive decision making. And I really thought that was interesting. I often think about Qualtrics in much more of the outside of the four walls of a businesses, and he was definitely talking about that, but he was saying how, the data from an outside of the four walls can help influence and drive change internally, and the kind of back and forth relationship that data has with the inside of the four walls operations versus the commercial side. And that started in minute 41 of the podcast, and I thought it was the most interesting of all the conversations. He went on to talk about some of the impacts of AI and some of the job displacement. But if you were going to tune into that podcast, I would say start with minute 36 and kind of listen to minute 46, 45. And you're going to get the big takeaways from a business lens perspective. But overall, great interview. Ryan came off, I don't know the guy, but he came off really down to earth and guy I'd want to hang out with. So kudos to you, buddy, for being a billionaire and owning the Utah Jazz, and wish you all the success. I obviously don't know the guy, but kudos. And let's jump into the deep dive. So, when we started this podcast show, we were really going to do one big deep dive every episode on a piece of software and do demos. And quite frankly, it just takes a lot of cycles to think through that, story map it, record it, etc. So not doing it on every episode, but I definitely want to start doing more features where there's a video element to the show, either through the actual show or we do it where we're mentioning it and then posting it on either Twitter or X, wherever you want to call it now, or YouTube. And one of the things I want to talk about was some of the major releases that came out with NetSuite. So NetSuite's a solution that I very much enjoy. I think they do a fantastic job helping businesses grow from small to medium to large to pretty large, almost enterprise. And the ecosystem and the suite apps and just all the extensibility of the solution, from the ERP, back-end financials, to having front-end CRM, integration with marketing. They have the ability to integrate with Shopify and eBay. So they're doing all the right stuff. And a couple of the bigger features that I thought were really cool that they released this summer was account reconciliation, which is very much on a back end, but it just helps the business run so much more smoothly. There's a bill capture. The big one for me was planning and budgeting. I'm someone that likes to do a lot of planning and budgeting and then look backs. The look backs and the reporting have always been there, but the planning and budgeting just really took a big step up in this release. Certainly what they're doing on the analytics warehouse, as more organizations just have more data and want more access to it. And then they did some really good stuff for manufacturing with CPQ, connectors with Shopify for those moving DTC. They did some updates to warehouse management and their workforce management. So, I'm always just a big fan of how QuickBooks or NetSuite stacks up against things like QuickBooks, but also how it jumps and competes with the Microsofts of the world and others. And these added features will continue to help enhance their solution and the platform. And hats off to everyone using it. What I think I'm going to do, if you guys like, and I'd like to hear it in the comments, is maybe do some videos that do some features on key aspects of how NetSuite can drive value and some unique things that you can do with NetSuite. So not going to do this in the next 3 or 4 shows, but maybe when we get up to episode number 25, I think is probably a good time where I'll have a few of these recorded and in the can from a NetSuite perspective, and I'll be sharing them more out on this platform. If you want to see the full release, similar to what I said before, I put the newsletter from Oracle. Oracle's the parent company here. Summer release number 1 video and summer release number 2 video. All right, so let's move from all the good stuff in the news and talk about where we can connect in real life or digitally. So right now, the only thing digital coming up is the next Lewis Manning event, which is going to be the 3rd week in September. We've got a loose frame of the topic, and it's going to be something around the role or the evolving role of the Chief Revenue Officer. I don't have the details yet, but on episode number 17, I will be sure to link it and talk about it in more depth. Coming to a rooftop near you in Chicago, the team from CohnReznick and Houlihan Capital are sponsoring a summer happy hour next Wednesday, 4:30 to 7 at the 300 South Riverside Plaza. Come check it out. There are a few tickets left for that event. I am going. I look forward to having either a Negroni or a lovely glass of Reposado tequila at the event. Make sure you find me there. Then we've got ACG Great Lakes kicking up in September on the 6th and 7th, and that will be at the Duke Energy Convention Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll be there both days. Haven't booked my hotel room, so if you have any suggestions, let me know of where to stay. And then not to confuse ACG with AGC, I will be at the AGC Partners 19th Annual Boston Technology Growth Conference. There's going to be over 200 attendees and 200 funds. It's going to be great in terms of deal review, deal making, networking. The reception is on the 13th with the major event on the 14th. I look forward to meeting a ton of new people. I've never been to this event, so, I do, like I said at the top of the show, I spend quite a bit of time in Boston, so it'll be great to kind of connect with some people that I know who are going and kind of in and around the Boston area for coffee and drinks. But for people who I don't know, looking forward to meeting with them. If you are going to any of these conferences or the Rooftop Happy Hour, send me a message on LinkedIn, DM me on Twitter. Either way, looking forward to meeting you guys. All right, that wraps it up for episode number 16 of the show. Don't forget to check us out. Listen, subscribe on Apple Podcast, Anchor, Google Podcast, Spotify. You can read and listen to the podcast on LinkedIn by subscribing to the newsletter, The Digital Deep Dive Show. You can check us out on YouTube. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Read Daily. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on, basically everywhere because my name is spelled so unique and different. It's just easy to grab. Once again, thanks for tuning into the show and look forward to catching you on episode number 17.